And they were roommates.
Oh my gosh, they were roommates.
We do not in any way officially represent the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints or Brigham Young University, Idaho. All opinions expressed belong solely to the host of this podcast.
Hey guys, this is Chelsey.
Yo, and I'm Connor.
This is an interesting setup, because mostly people have like a legit professional microphone.
Yeah.
And we just got some earbuds
that are dangling from our shelf.
I actually found out that like podcasting mics are sold out on Amazon during this quarantine. And I'm like, are we just like basic? But then I was like, you know what? Freaking, when is the best time to be listening to podcasts than when you're stuck at home?
Yeah, right? I think a lot of... I don't think we're the only roommates that are looking at each other like, well, you in?
Yeah. There's actually another podcast called The Roommates. Mm-hmm. I don't know anything about them. I just know because I was making our Twitter and they came up and I was like, whatever.
Our greatest rivals has approached.
We're half baked in this podcast, but it's fine. Well, you know what? We're being real, okay?
Yeah.
All right. So, did you say we want to do like a news? What was it called? Junk drawer segment?
News from the junk drawer.
Yeah.
Or something along those lines.
Do you have any?
Not one that I was like specifically thinking. Give me a sec. I will look something
so the main one that I was thinking of is, and I don't want to get into this big political thing, but when Trump was saying, yeah, just to inject people with disinfectant stuff.
Totally,
and I'm like,
dude.
I'm sure what I read was out of context.
Oh, no. He had to go back on the air and say, just for the record, don't. I also love his comment about the germs being too strong for antibiotics, which it's definitely a virus. Like, it's definitely not bacteria.
He sounds so much like a doctor that I almost like trust him, you know?
Right?
Like, he's our president. Like, he would know about these things. Also,
like, you'd think that the president of the United States would have a script. But he doesn't. There has to be some PA dude behind the scenes wetting him, like peeing his pants.
He never reads my notes.
Yeah, no. Like, he's going rogue again. The poor man's gonna go Obama gray. I feel for that dude.
He needs Obama's scriptwriter because that man was excellent. Yeah. Gosh. Anyways, that's the only thing that came up to my mind.
Oh, dude. And I don't know if I'm just being like... If I should, but like I don't read Corona news. I just don't. It just feels
it's
like
a bummer.
It is, and there's nothing that I can do about it. Like if the thing that I can do to help is to stay home, like it just feels like there's like 20 new things every day, and none of them are great.
Right.
And
yeah. No, I just read...
Like, what am I gonna do about it? I don't know.
I just read recently that there's like 81 deaths in Idaho alone of coronavirus.
Cool.
Right? I mean, which is super low in comparison to other states, but it's still like, hi guys, it's here.
Yeah.
Anywho. But it's fine.
It's fine.
It's fine.
It's fine. It's fine.
We're fine.
We're fine.
Another news, I started therapy.
Awesome!
I know. It's a long time coming, and I'm so happy about it. It took me a long time to get there, but you know what? I got there, and that's what's important. Guys, go to therapy, please.
If there's one thing that you take away from our shitty podcast, it's go to therapy.
Please, do yourself a favor, do other people a favor, and go to therapy. And if you're at BYU Idaho, it's freaking free!
Yeah, if you go to BYU Idaho, and I just think... My take is, even if you don't have a clinical diagnosable mental illness, everyone has bad things that they need to unpackage in order to be a more successful human being. Yeah,
you don't have to have some traumatic experience.
No.
You don't need to have anything diagnosable. They are just like a common sense filter that everyone needs. And it doesn't, even if you have you're like, there's no reason I should feel this way because I had a really good upbringing. It doesn't matter. You're a human being with thoughts and feelings that need to be recognized. Yep. So do yourself a favor.
Yeah, many adults, especially in America, even though they don't have like a chronic lifelong illness, a lot of adults at some point or another will take antidepressants, you know, just, you know, for a short period, but, you know, still.
It's okay.
How many housewives are prescribed Xanax in this country, you know?
That's our PSA for today. So topic. Well, I guess, did we want to go with, like, BYU stuff? Or did we want to go with, like, the topic that I wrote down because we don't have to do that one or the other one? What are we feeling? What is the spirit telling you right now?
What is the spirit telling me? Wow. Yeah, I love that. That might be a great jumping off point to sort of what you were thinking about doing.
The culture one? The Mormon culture one? Okay, okay, here we go.
I love it. I love it when people
Let's jump off the cliff together on this one.
Let's hold hands and just... and just admit.
Because this is venting time.
Venting time, yeah.
Okay, so the topic is Mormon culture versus being a disciple and a member of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints.
Yeah.
Because believe it or not, there is a huge difference.
Yeah.
And let's get into it.
Chelsey, you can't see it, but Chelsey is like, just like, oh, she is just grabbing her soapbox and...
There's a lot of, like, neck fat involved with, like, a lot of head bobbing and just, like, jowls a-shaking in anger at this subject.
Jowls gnashing. The gnashing of teeth and...
I was gonna say, how do you gnash jowls?
I don't know. How do you gnash anything? But yeah, this is a topic that, you know, we feel very strongly about. You know, there's members of the church that kind of make you want to vomit. Like, you know what I mean? Like, you know, it's just one of those things of...
They don't represent the church very well because of the way that they behave or the way that they treat other people.
Yeah.
And it sucks because a lot of times a lot of non-members will be introduced to the church, but they'll also be introduced to these individuals who don't properly represent Christ, and so then it pushes them away.
Yeah.
And you're just like, thanks for nothing.
Yeah.
You useless reptile.
Like, super cool. You stand up at the pulpit and just talk about all of the missionary work that you are doing, except for people who do not fit aesthetically or, like, emotionally your idea of what a Mormon should be. Those people aren't allowed.
Hi, it doesn't work that way.
Yeah, no. And just for the record, you know, Mormon culture doesn't always kind of reflect a person who is, like, not righteous. Like, it's not always a bad thing.
For sure. And
it can be super funny and, like, sometimes annoying, but, like, it's not always indicative of not being a disciple, not being whatever. Right. However, it's just, people don't understand that it's a separate thing, you know?
It is. Because it's like...
Like, they coexist, and sometimes it's, you know, I don't mind it at all, but sometimes it doesn't.
Right. There's certain things that are just like, guys, we gotta change this. And other things that's like, you know what? Mormons are pretty, you know, or people that are LDS, I should say.
Yeah. Are
really cheesy in their humor. That doesn't hurt anybody.
Just cheesy in general sometimes.
It's just part of the culture. The cheesiness is there, and it's just, you know, it's there. Whatever. It's fine.
It's fine. Yeah.
It doesn't hurt anybody. But when you have things like, you know, people judging you for not going on a mission, or people judging you for being divorced, that freaking needs to change.
Yeah.
Because it's not, you know, it's not being Christ-like, it's not being understanding. So let's get into it. I actually have a quote that I looked up. Yeah, so this is actually from Looking Beyond the Mark. It's an Ensign article by Elder Quentin L. Cook. Sorry, I don't remember what year it is, but just look it up, guys. So basically what he said was, excuse me, quote, "Today there's a tendency among some of us to look beyond the mark, rather than to maintain a testimony of gospel basics. We do this when we substitute the philosophies of men for gospel truths, engage in gospel extremism, seek heroic gestures at the expense of daily consecration, or elevate rules over doctrine." I think that really hits it. I think it really hits it on the head. Yeah. One of the things that popped up to me was like this idea of heroic gestures at the sake of daily consecration. Yeah. And like, I guess that it's just like when you try and be a missionary, but you're not sincere and you're not a friend to that person. Yeah. And you're like, wow, awesome, love it, love that you're doing. I think they just shove it in your face, and you're just like, cool. Yeah, like awesome.
It's yeah. The thing that kind of struck me when I first heard that was the rules over.
Oh yeah, the elevate rules over doctrine.
Yes, which a lot of, it's interesting because like a lot of the things that like, it was interesting that like when it did come up that I was religious and I was a member of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, it was mostly like, oh, like I've seen you drink Coke, or like don't you like playing cards the other night? And it's those little things that like, I don't know how those things became
a thing,
a unofficial rule that you just don't do, and that's a major problem because it's like it wasn't said by our apostles. It's just said by like maybe a bishop somewhere that who decided, and then it's just like something that I don't like, so now I'm going to associate it with being LDS because I want to somehow like uplift my prejudice or uplift my ideas and sort of pin it on my religion rather than a personal preference.
Yeah.
Like, it's those little things that make me out of my mind. Because, like, where is that written? Who said it?
Part of me wants to just go back and kind of dig into, like, where do those things come from? Like, who said that drinking caffeinated soda was against the word of wisdom? Who said that, like, playing cards was, like dealing, toying with the devil?
Yeah.
And,
it's like, something to do with, like, the face, it's specifically face cards of like, they mean like different, like, who cares? Like, how, like, if that is going to like shake your testimony, if something like that is going to like somehow taint you, then like, maybe your testimony isn't as wicked strong as you think it is, my man. Like,
just
honestly.
Such a weird priority and like.
It's
just weird. Yeah, and I think it's when leaders say something and people take it as fact.
Yeah.
And it's like, you really have to think this through for yourself.
Yeah.
Like, for instance, I mean, I could talk about this subject forever, but like when, people are talking about, don't watch rated R movies, it's such a blanket statement, and it's such a personal thing if you want to do that or not.
Yeah.
That it's like, if you have a strong enough testimony, I think you can weed through those things for yourself.
Yeah.
And, obviously, some people are like, you know what, caffeine messes with me, and so I'm choose not to drink that, or I want to be healthy, so I'm not gonna do it. And it's like, that's a totally better reason to not do it than just, oh, I think this is against the rules.
Yeah, I love that you point that out, because I think the culture of Mormonism is so like, it's almost as though we're the Israelites and we have like freaking like. We're
the chosen people.
Yeah, and, like, we need these ridiculously strong rules, and if you get one toe out of line, there you go. Like, that's not how this works. So we don't need, like, rules about every single part of our day.
Yeah.
We don't. We just don't. And I do agree that, with rated R movies, stuff like that, there are some people who, like, it might affect them differently. They might, seek out other things depending on what the movie is. And, maybe that's something that they decide, not for me, thanks, but it's like the stepping outside of that to say, and you shouldn't either.
Right. Where it's just like, there's like that judgment cast. It's like, I remember one time there was someone in a ward or a leader or something that says if you watch rated R movies, you're being hypocritical and you shouldn't have like a temple recommend. And it's like, if you're watching pornography, I get that.
Yeah,
but
the
it's
pornography of women.
On those face cards.
Yeah. Yep.
Oh my gosh, one time I saw some playing cards where like the queen, there's like, the queen on one side and then like the king on like the opposite side, like reflecting, and like she had like royal clothes, but then like one of her boobs was like hanging out, and I'm like, hello, and I'm like, what the freak? I've never seen that before.
Yeah, no, there's like some like classical paintings where like there's just like a boobie.
Yeah, just
not both boobies, just one, and it's just chilling with like
gossamer spread over, and it's like,
it's like,
all right. Whatever, artistic choice.
Yeah,
I mean,
I feel ya.
I feel ya.
I get it. Totally.
I get it.
It's nice. But yeah,
or the whole thing that art, like nude art is equivalent to pornographic.
Which was something that really struck me during my first humanities class, where the professor literally like sat us down, gave us like a handout sheet, and was like, "We're gonna be looking at nude bodies and paintings, like early Renaissance paintings. It's fine, okay."
Yeah,
it's
literally.
cool, basically. And it was like, thank you, yes. Thank you.
Right. Anybody who goes to BYU Idaho, or really any college, has to go through like some humanities class.
Yeah.
And normally in a normal college, people be like, you know, whatever.
Yeah.
But at BYU and at BYU Idaho, they have to like have this note that says, hey, it's okay, don't feel bad for looking at these. Don't feel bad if you're like, this is beautiful.
Yeah.
If you do, but the thing is, like, people who do have a pornographic, addiction, I mean, maybe it is triggering, but also, you have a pornographic addiction. I think there's more things
there's other
wrong here than us looking at nude art, you know?
Yeah, and that's the thing of, like, what, like, becoming an adult means that you can't allow those things to, like, take over your, like, you can't, like...
It's just, like, one of those things where it's, like, you're mixing up... you know, what you believe to be doctrine to what is actually culturally healthy for your development.
Yeah.
And that's where, you know, a lot of things become really confusing, I think, for a lot of young LDS youth.
Yeah.
Is just like, oh, wait, I'm confused. I thought this wasn't okay, but it is okay.
Yeah, it's
one of those things where it's like, you know, part of it is your parents and what they feed you and what your church leaders
how it's discussed in young women's and young men's.
Right, and it's one of those things where it's just like you do have to kind of question everything, and that's okay.
Yeah.
There was a talk about not doubting, but quite, you know, being curious and being like, is that true? Where does that come from?
Yeah.
Do I personally believe it? How does that affect my relationship with Christ?
Yeah.
And being that person that's willing to search it out, because that's ultimately what Joseph Smith did.
Yeah, that's our church members. There's a note by Elder Uchtdorf. It wasn't in general conference. I believe it must have been in some devotional, but he, like, outright said, like, we do not expect members of the church to just follow blindly. And in fact, they don't want us to. They want us to ask, and they want us to pray and look inside of ourselves, like, is what this old dude telling me right, you know? Mm-hmm. Because, and, you know, even for the prophet, but even more so to our local church leaders, because they can mess up. They can say things that aren't true. And in the terms of, I think when we talk about sexual purity, on one hand, you're taught, you know, our bodies are beautiful. Our bodies are a reflection of Christ. But on the other hand, we're taught, you know, cover all that, you know, like,
cover it all up. And if someone does sexually abuse you, you're like chewing gum and nobody else wants you. Yeah. And it's like this dichotomy of like wrong.
Yeah, it's wrong. Modesty, yes, you're modest because that is a way of showing reverence towards this gift. The body isn't
towards yourself, towards your, towards your religion.
And that's not to say that, like, we are in some way dirty or in some way these things. And frankly, in my opinion, women being modest is not for dudes so they don't act up. You know, especially, I think this topic is, the tone of it can become, yes, your body is beautiful, but it's somehow a sexual item that needs to be covered until you find somebody that you can give it to. You know, it's
such a weird thing because it's like, and I honestly think this is more of an American problem. Yeah. And that this like, you know, oh, you're such a distraction to men, or you're such, you know, and just like, if
not
you
my
show
problem.
Right, and you're
not
just
my problem, dude. You know, obviously, men and women are different, but I think the danger of that can be, we're not so different that I think sometimes it becomes women are so
that they're almost like a decoration to the family,
or,
and it's
or
like
something that or like a temptation, or
and it's just weird because, and then the thing is too is like so long they've been like, you know, women's role is being a mother and and someone to guide her children, and you know, when a lot of women have, you know, averted themselves from careers because they didn't want to be seen as like not fulfilling their role as a woman. Yeah. And a lot of women I understand this big controversy about women not having the priesthood, but when you go to the temple, women do have the priesthood.
Yeah.
And it's one of those things where it's like the priesthood is being misunderstood because of the way that we treat women, and it's also a huge misunderstanding between, you know, the powers that women have and you know, the roles that women have, because it's like, yes, women are mothers, you know, but they're also so many more things that they could be doing and contributing to, and that, you know, I feel like a lot of women just didn't fulfill a lot of what they wanted to do and what their purposes or could do, because there was this idea that if you tried to go anything above being a mother and a household person, that you were somehow abandoning your position as a daughter of God. And it's like, that is absolutely the opposite from the truth.
Yeah, that's... And I do think that, like, I think this is another part of, you know, the culture, and frankly, sometimes the culture of Christianity, of, you know, the perfect idea of what a family is, and...
Well, it's kind of like the 1950s version of a nuclear family, which we're realizing more and more that there's more mixed families and more like, you know, a woman taking care of her children and her ex-husband's children. Yeah. And adopting and all these things. And it's like, to me, that's so beautiful, because we're going beyond like, you know, just stay within your family, just stay within the tradition, and just stay within... Because it's like, listen, sometimes the family you're born with isn't the greatest.
Yeah, sometimes life happens. Yeah. Things happen. I do think that that's, like, another, you know, culture versus gospel. You know, the gospel is not a hard, fast, one-size-fits-all program. Mm-hmm. Like, it's not, like, some people will never get married, some people will never have children, some people, you know, there's so many things that happen, and just because you are not, you know, within this life following, you know, the path that, you know, the culture drills into you constantly of, this is how you do things, this is the way you need to do things, like, just because you don't fit right into that, and maybe you do, except for a few things, like, everyone's different. Like, it's ridiculous to me that everyone would do all the same things, accomplish all the same things, because things don't work that way.
Right, and there's a huge problem in our culture with perfectionism, and this idea of, like, I need to do my ministering, I need to bake all these cookies for general conference, I need to have my lesson completely figured out, I need to do this, and especially with women, you know, it's like they feel like this huge laundry list and this huge expectation for themselves that they could never, ever meet. Yeah. And it's like, no one said you had to do that, and if they did, the idea of perfectionism and women being so overwhelmed with all these things that they think they need to do to seem like they have it together, again, I think that's more of also just a women's problem. Yeah. And, you know, the stress of cultural expectation doesn't help with that. Yeah. And it's so important just to realize, like, you know, you're probably doing way better than you think you are. Yeah. And the Lord...
He knows, and he's probably wishing that you weren't killing yourself. Yeah, he
doesn't, like, he's probably like, hey, stop beating yourself up that the dishes aren't done. Your kid is happy. Yeah. You have a decently good marriage, you know, whatever it is. Yeah. Stop trying to make yourself worse, you know, in a worse off situation than you are, because there's only so much one human being can do. Yeah. So
I think that's an interesting point, because I think that's in the realm of marriage and sort of, you know, farther along in your adulthood, that's a major problem. I think it's also a major problem for, like, kind of our demographic of young adults who are graduating high school, maybe getting off their mission, coming to school, especially at BYU Idaho, of this preconceived notion. I mean, sort of, you know, looking at their lives and saying, okay, you know, the next step is marriage, the next step is, you know, whatever. And in an ideal world, perhaps, yes, you know, a lot of people find spouses in this area of their life. But if you don't, like, don't...
Also, you're in your early 20s. You don't need to be getting married so early.
And frankly, I just think it's a matter of, like, sure, it may happen, it might not, and that's fine. Yeah. It's all fine, you know?
Again, stop beating yourself up for cultural expectations.
Yeah,
because that's not fair.
Life is not a race. Just because somebody, has a marriage and you don't, doesn't mean they're ahead of you. Doesn't mean that you're behind. Just because you might be married doesn't mean that you're ahead. It's
so, you just can't compare yourself to other people because it's like comparing bananas and grapefruit. It's not the same thing.
I know.
And I purposely didn't say apples and oranges because those are pretty similar.
Nice.
Good grapefruit.
Good thinking there. I love that you were proud enough to oh, by the way, if you hadn't have noticed.
I was trying to be more unique and original, and
you're so random.
Oh,
I love it.
You know what? I am the way I am. I'm just so different.
We're both so different.
And that's the reason why we're doing this is because we feel like other people feel the same way about this.
Yeah, you don't. That's something that struck me. Like when I started coming to school here, it's not as present as in Utah, but it's not quite as present in Idaho, but still there's this culture and you're kind of expected not to step out of line, and if you do, you're kind of not like that, not to say that you're ostracized, however,
but there's some judgment. Yeah, there's some judgment thrown your way. And another thing too is if you're not happy and chipper all the time. I actually have an article. And guys, look this up because it's a fantastic article. It's by Mark Omenheimer, and it's called Mormons Offer Cautionary Lesson on Sunny Outlook versus Literary Greatness. So this is more geared towards, famous LDS authors.
It's my favorite.
I just love Brandon Sanderson. But this one was just talking about how, a lot of, there's a huge LDS culture of authors that specifically write books that a lot of literary critics don't like because it's not realistic to people's lives.
Yeah.
And, and there's some outliers what's his bucket? Who wrote Ender's Game.
Oh, he's kind of a D-hole, though. Let's be honest.
I'm talking about his work, not him himself.
Oh, let's do an episode about him, because he's
That's the thing is, I don't know anything about him, so it'd have to be just you telling me about it, which I'm so fine with.
Yeah.
But I just don't know anything about it.
I love that people know that he's Mormon and associate Mormonism with this man.
It's okay, we'll get into that. And then it'll give me time to research his stuff.
Yeah.
But then there was, of course, Stephanie Meyer. Guys, listen, I know Twilight.
Wait, what?
You didn't know
member?
What? Are you kidding me? You didn't know that?
Absolutely not.
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah, she's a member of the church.
Why are Mormon authors just Looney Tunes? Why?
I actually really like Stephanie Meyer as a person.
Uh-huh.
I think she's great.
Yeah.
Regardless of Twilight, regardless of the host, whatever.
I just think that book is a reflection of what's going on inside of her, and I don't dig it, dude.
She fully, guys, this is let's just talk about Twilight in a whole
Let's talk about Mormon authors in one episode. That'd be great.
Okay, let's do that. Anyways, my point in bringing this up is that there was a LDS author who used to be a Mormon, but what happened was his parents basically said, you can keep a journal, but only write the positive things in your journal. And so
what?
Yeah,
That's not the point of a journal.
No, that's the point is sometimes Mormonisms just have this idea of not accepting the darker side of life.
Yeah.
Which is kind of what
I don't acknowledge it doesn't exist.
Right, and that was kind of what I went through in therapy this last week of just we need to acknowledge the darker things that are going on, because if you don't acknowledge it and how it's truly affecting you, we can't get past it.
Yeah.
And it's one of those things where it's people don't want to accept the fact that people are capable of doing terrible things, and that's why Ted Bundy got away with so much crap, because he was freaking baptized in the church, and people are like, what? No, he would never do something so terrible. And he was literally the worst serial killer of all time.
Yeah.
Because he went under this guise of
Ted wouldn't do those things.
Yeah, and it's under this guise of oh, he's religious, he has morals, of course he wouldn't do those things. Yeah. It's he's a freaking wolf in sheep's clothing.
Yeah.
And it's so dangerous to think that nobody's capable of terrible things, that dark things don't exist, and it's just like one of those things where you really need to be so careful, because that's why a lot of child molestation problems come up with, like, in church settings.
Yeah.
Or like not acknowledging that a terrible thing has happened to you because you don't want, because then, you know, you want to be happy and chipper and want to feel happy all the time.
Yeah.
And it's like, no, please tell me about all the crap, you know, because that's so important to acknowledge.
Yeah, it's that kind of idea that somehow, you know, at church you need to, like, a lot of people put on this false persona of, you know, they're such a good, like, I'm such a good member, my family's perfect, my marriage is perfect, when behind the scenes, you know, maybe abuse is happening, maybe, you know, like, even if it's just as little as, like, having a hard time getting your life together, like, that's fine. You don't, like, don't go to church and, like, preach about how awesome you are and preach about, you know, what your family's doing that's great and everyone else should be doing the same.
Right. And I think that's what, like, Relief Society has kind of become. It's just like, we're just struggling with this, and we just, I don't know, man.
It's just, I dislike it when, you know, we're having a discussion, because that's kind of what, you know, on one hand, it's good that it's not just a lecture by the teacher. However, it sometimes does become, oh, here's what I do because I'm such a good member. Yeah. And, like,
that's not what it is. And that's the thing is, like, I don't know what it is to correct what it is, because I've been through so many Relief Societies where it's just like, you know, some girl is crying because life is hard, and other people are like, here's the thing that I do. And I just feel like the best Relief Societies is when it's been like, we've all gone through crap, and here's some amazing insight on Jesus Christ and what he does for us, and all the evidence that he totally understands the dark side of life and is there to help us through it. Yeah. You know, I feel like that has been the best Relief Societies I've ever been through, where the teacher has really been in tune and the people are really in, or the teacher asks really good questions so that it doesn't really go off the deep end, you know? Because sometimes people are like, what do you guys think about this? And it's just like open-ended, and it's like anything goes.
Of like, okay, girls, let me give you the 5-year account of my eating disorder, to which, you know, and this is coming from somebody who has struggled with an eating disorder for most of my life. No, thank you. No, thank you.
Please don't bring that up.
No, thank you. Like, and this might be a little bit of contradiction to what we're talking about, of there's a balance of, you know, not hiding things, but also understanding what is cool to talk about in a public setting. Yeah. Because, like, yes, like, you know,
get therapy, guys. If you have those things and you're talking about them,
this is not therapy. This is not. None of us are qualified.
Session.
This is not.
Relief Society is not therapy group session.
Yeah, no, it's, you know, most of my talks, I think, revolve around quotes and thoughts from apostles rather than like, okay, guys, here's what I do.
And that's what it should be. It should be around scriptures and quotes from apostles, around a theme. Guys, freaking take public speaking. Really put in the effort to listen to the Spirit and to find ways that work. Yeah. That teach other people and are effective.
For everything that we've been kind of discussing, a lot of the negatives towards Mormon culture, I do think there are some positives that can be found in the culture. Like, it's still not technically, like, doctrine. However, there is a major, like, in our culture, there's just sort of this natural inclination to help. And how many organizations can you find, like, oh, this member needs somebody to help them move, this member, you know, lost their job, this member, whatever, and
people swarm in to help.
It's without even thinking, you know.
That's true. And I will say, even non-members have sensed that, of just like, hey, you know what, I had this family emergency, and this, you know, my Mormon neighbor immediately was like, I can watch your kid, you know? Yeah. And that's just...
Or like, okay, well, I guess I'll do... Not even... Like, some people just don't ask. They just do it, you
Those
know?
are the best freaking guys. Example of a freaking disciple of Jesus Christ is someone who doesn't even say, hey, do you need help or whatever? They're the ones that are like, I'm helping and this is what I'm doing. Is that okay with you? Just kidding. Yeah. It's not up to you. I'm helping you anyways.
Yeah.
There was one lady, my family just moved out of the house and we didn't even realize she did this until I went to my neighbor like a year later. And she was like, yeah, when you guys moved out, there was some trash left over and this nice lady came up, you know, who wasn't from your neighborhood came over and picked up all this trash. Mm-hmm. And I was like, oh, who was it? And it's like, oh, that lady you hang out with sometimes when you go to church. And it's like, and I almost like wanted to cry because I was like, this lady didn't even like was seeking attention for it. I didn't even know until like a year later.
Yeah.
Guys, follow those examples.
Yeah, like when my mom, maybe my senior year of high school, my mom got very ill and wasn't at the house for kind of long periods of time. And when she was, you know, my dad and I were working hard to like, you know, keep the house afloat. At some point, there were so many instances of the Relief Society and like the elders quorum bringing us stuff. We have too much food.
We don't have enough room in the fridge.
You know, we like that time period was like where I gained a testimony, even more so about like the priesthood, because there were so many priesthood holders that came and to support my father and to support us as a family, and you know, they didn't have to.
Yeah.
And like frankly, I was the only kid at home, and there were like the counselor and the bishopric that my dad was a part. He was bishop. I was on my way out the door, but he came in with like a plastic thing with like Safeway cake in it. Mm-hmm. And he was like, you know, asking me how my mom was and whatever, and he was like, he like raised the cake and he was like, so, you know, I just thought I'd bring this over, and I was like, okay, like, I'll tell my mom that you brought her something, but, you know, she's not here right now, and he's like, oh no, it's for you.
Oh.
And on my way to therapy, actually, I was like, thank you, brother. Yeah. It's like, it's, you know, it's those little things. And, you know, there's a pastor that lives across from us, and he and my dad talk from time to time, and at some point he was like, it really amazes me that, like, something needs to be done, and, like, without even asking, like, people just, like, go into action, and, like, whether it's, like, a church thing or, like, a service thing, when he's like, I beg some of my church members to help with a church event, and maybe 2 people show up.
Gosh.
You know?
I mean, yeah, and that's definitely, you know, the thing that I want to add to that is people who are not of our faith are just like, I cannot tell you how many times, you know, some, like that guy in the parking lot at Walmart that was like, honey, do you know that you got a tire that's flat?
Yeah.
And then, you know, and then a mom that was like, you know, hey, you know, you got something wrong with your car, babe doll. Do you need like a tow or something? You know, and it's just like, aw, guys, I'm so glad you're looking out for me, you know? Yeah. And it's like one of those things, it's like, regardless of your religion, there's this universal idea of kindness and love. Yeah. That, you know,
it's not limited to our church, but, you know, it's at some point during our trip, we ran into, like, we couldn't find a place, like, we couldn't find laundromats anywhere. Like, there were just not...
Here?
No, in Ireland. There was, like, not laundromats. And we were, like, running...
Because they have everything hung up on a rope outside of their house. Am I wrong, though?
I mean, kinda.
Oh, really?
It's pretty similar, but, like, it was just a weird thing that we didn't and at some point we did find somewhere to wash our clothes. I think one of our hotel places had, like, a little laundry area, but, like, we were kind of, like, asking around, like, a church building, and, like, this, like, family who, like, we've never met, like, before is like, oh, like, you can always, like, we can give you our address, you can, like, wash your clothes, and it's like, guy, like, you are...
Wow, that's so nice.
You're angels. Like, it's just nice that no matter where you go, if you go into, like, a community of LDS people, they're gonna have your back because there's that spirit of Christ-like love, and, like, a lot of church members will, like, genuinely help you out. Yeah. Which, and I don't say this next story to bash Utah, however, that spirit...
Please do.
That spirit of Christ-like love and service and concern is not always present in the church. It's in the church, in the separate congregations. And that is to say that...
Just because someone's LDS doesn't mean they necessarily have that.
Yes, and to just say that, like, you know, it's not universal everywhere. But my... a couple family members who lived in Utah for a year or 2, I don't know, but they found a different job in Florida. It was like super like last minute, you know, he got the job and then they were having to go to start. And
That's so stressful.
yes.
Oh my gosh.
Yes, and within all that stress, moving your house, gathering up all of your worldly possessions.
That's a long drive. Were they flying or were they driving?
He flew to start the job while he was finding a place to live. And
when she was gonna drive the truck across the country.
Yes, my mom actually went to go help them, but during the process of his wife's was getting the house ready, getting their children ready, and
finding out how disgusting your house is while you're packing,
that you didn't
and not having time to clean it.
Yeah, no, and so she contacted the Relief Society of the Bishop and said, we're having to move out like really, really soon. It would be really helpful to get some help moving. Here's a game. Would you like to know how many church members came to help them?
One?
None.
No.
Not a single one.
Was it like she called her like the day before and said, hey, can we get somebody here out, on Friday or kind of a thing?
I don't.
Or was it like the day of?
I don't know. Knowing her.
Even if it was the day of, somebody would have been like, oh yeah, I just got off work.
Like people have done that here. And, my dad would be putting on his shoes, like, all right, time to, you know what I mean?
That's awful.
Yes, and it was in little old Utah, West Jordan.
Oh, yeah.
So, but here's the thing. They, and they were she was very, very hurt because, and knowing her, I don't think she called last minute. She's a very organized person. I really do feel like very hurt by this.
Yeah,
of course.
I would be too.
And so they weren't very positive about their new ward coming into Florida. Like, without even asking, there were families coming to their door like, what do you need?
Wow.
So
I had a similar situation living in Southern California. There was some wards in Southern California that look really put together, but when they do not do what they say they are.
Yeah.
That is the most, democratic way I can put that.
Yes.
Democratic? That's not the right word.
Liberal?
No. The most...
Diplomatic.
Yep. I was like, democratic? That doesn't sound quite right. Diplomatic.
And I was like, yep. Totally.
Yes, liberal. Democratic. All the way.
Yep. Just liberal. Yeah. That's fine. We're fine.
Yeah, that's what I meant. Anyways.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, it is true, and I really actually love, I think it was this last conference Nelson was basically said, I'm really sorry if, someone was supposed to represent themselves as a disciple of Christ and just hasn't come through, because a lot of people has had that happen to them where, for instance, they did ask for help and someone who was supposed to help didn't.
Yeah, no.
And someone who was supposed to be there for you wasn't. Yeah. And it's like, it sucks. Really aware of what kind of, situation you're in and feel out the ward and...
Yeah, and you can't base your testimony on that.
Yeah.
If you're trying to find reasons to be like, oh, the church isn't true, sure, that's a nice arrow in your quiver.
Yeah.
But as, if you're a church member and you're trying to, develop your testimony, you kind of need to be a grown-up, and you kind of have to not allow your feelings to be hurt, because...
And it does suck, because you're like, I have to go to see these people every week,
Yeah.
And they don't condone ward hopping a lot, but some people I know have had to. We have had situations where families have asked to move to a different ward because of some very serious situations that was not healthy for them to be in the ward. Somewhere in California, I'm not going to say where, we had a second counselor that had been cheating on his wife for 12 years. Ooh. There was a lot of things that were not going well in that ward, aside from the fact that, leadership was corrupt.
Yeah.
And I think there was just a lot of drama going on and a lot of negativity going on, and so that family asked to be removed from that ward, and that permission was granted. And so they have to drive, another hour away from home to go to church every week, but if it's better for them to do that and have a good spiritual connection, sometimes that's necessary. Yeah. And that's a really extreme case. Yeah. It doesn't happen very often. Yeah. But it's one that I want to put out there, that if someone is in that situation, that it's okay to be like, listen, I need to protect myself.
Yeah.
I need to not be in this negative environment, whatever the case may be.
Yeah, and I would say, as somebody who, I have very strong opinions about many things. I mean, yeah, like, if you do encounter those things, don't allow them to ruin the gospel for you. Don't allow those people to ruin your mood. Don't allow it, like, and I've had to do this, of when I encounter those things, I reflect on the fact that I know what's right. You know, I know what's right. I know, and it sucks that they're not doing it. What can I do about it? I can complain to somebody, but isn't anything going to be done? Like, I think it's good to allow yourself to sort of hold on to those convictions.
Like its own testimony builder moment, where it's like it's testing your faith, and you really have to, pedal to the metal of like, do I really believe this?
Yeah.
And it's one of those things where it's like, those people are called of God, but there's still agency.
Yeah.
That's still a factor.
Yeah.
And it super sucks that they're not using it for the right reasons, but they still have agency. If they're not good people, they're not good people. And if they, happen to be in a position of leadership, it's gonna do a lot of damage. And that's just kind of, the world's a fallen world, and that's just kind of the nature of it, which is why it's so important to recognize, I guess, those negative feelings and really becoming in tune with, like, the spirit. And, like, negative feelings aren't an absence of the spirit. It's a part of being human, and the spirit is a tool to navigate through rough waters.
Yeah, and take those experiences, and when you're in a position of leadership, say something.
Yeah.
You have the power to not always make that situation right, but you have the power to, like, don't just sit silently and let it happen.
Yeah.
Like, you have the right to say, this isn't right, and this is not a reflection of what, like, if you experience those things and you leave, we're without somebody who knows what the right thing is.
Yeah, it's like you're so needed because you do have something to say, and if there is something wrong, we need to know about it.
Some people, members of the church, are trying to weed out. You know what I mean? I really do think, I had a lady like this in my ward of, if you did not fit with her idea of what a good Mormon is, or frankly visual, then
it wasn't right.
Yeah, then you're wrong. With that, during that experience, I made it my duty that, like, oh, I'm not missing out on something anymore. I'm not missing out on anything. I'm showing you that, newsflash, lady, I'm here.
Yeah.
But here I am with my
my grunge look.
Yeah, with
here
my
for you.
With my punk rock and my hula hoops. I'm here, lady.
And my snake bites. Just kidding. Connor does not have snake.
Oh.
You could pull him off, though.
Dude, that's like another topic of, like,
And a nose ring. Dude, you could kill it. You're like, don't tempt me.
You do not know how long I've wanted to have piercings and tattoos. That's, like, one of the things that, like, if you didn't fit with her, she would outright be mean to you. She would outright, like, embarrass you.
I feel like that's a lot of people, though.
Yeah, and
it's like...
And, like, you have done what they want. Don't allow them the satisfaction of seeing you leave.
Yeah.
Wow, I wish I could curse on this podcast, but,
You already did.
Did I?
Yeah, dude.
Oh, okay. But yeah, I am filled with this.
Don't be the reason why you stay. Just have it be something that's like, I'm not gonna, cave to people's expectations of me. And I'm doing this for me. That's ultimately what the gospel is. It's doing it for yourself. Doing it for, your future generations.
I believe sincerely that, obviously, every person on this earth could be living the best version of their life that they can if they follow the principles of the gospel. Can still live a nice life. If you're looking at the gospel and you
feel it like
you feel like it can't make you happy and you leave, that's, like, I've met plenty of people who were still friends and they're living a different life. The main thing is they don't shit on everyone who's still around.
Yeah.
It's like, that's completely toxic, and stop it. Like,
yeah,
I'm not gonna get on your butt for like not being a member of the church. Like, don't be a dick.
Yeah.
Like,
here's the thing, is like, regardless if you're religious or not, just be a good person. And also if you're
cool.
And if you are religious, freaking be a good person, because there's so many examples of messed up religious people that tarnish the name of like Christianity and being religious in general. And that's why there's so many like TV shows that are just like, oh, this is the Christian character that is like so strict and like has the most ridiculous ideas ever. And it's like watching that, I'm like, I've met people like that, man. I can't even argue.
Totally, yeah. So I guess the moral of today's episode is there is a difference. There's a difference between culture, and it's annoying. You know,
it'll be annoying to be sure, and it is frustrating, but it won't prove that the gospel is wrong.
Yeah, it shouldn't, and if it does, then maybe develop stronger. Like, it's when people say like, well, this one experience is like the reason for why I left. It's like, I think you've had other reasons. I think you're looking for something to be like, I can tell people, you know, this is why I left, not just that I want to do other things.
Right, and again,
which is a fine reason.
Yeah, and it's like those experiences are valid. However, you know, you kind of have to look at them through the right lens. Yeah, and it's just like sometimes it's just an excuse, you know, and you just have to be careful of that. So yeah, I think that wraps it up for today. Yeah, that's. I don't know. I don't even know what to say. I feel like we should have like a little saying we say at the end. Yeah. Be real with yourself.
Don't be a dick.
Yes. Don't be a dick. Goodbye.
It's the Bill and Ted. Just party hard and be excellent to each other.
Just be excellent to each other, man. Yeah. I like that. Just goodbye. And don't be a dick.